Hi again. I want to talk about the hierarchy of information quality. Not all information is created equal, and in academic writing and in academic research, it's your job to scrutinize information, to figure out what's fact, what's fiction, what's just people's opinions, and determine where the truth lies. It's a difficult task, but hopefully I'll be able to tell you a few things that will help you make these determinations. Information is arranged in a hierarchy, and unfortunately, there is no big book of scientific knowledge. There's no one source where we can go and check all facts. It just doesn't exist. It'd be nice if it did, but it's not that easy. Therefore, information is arranged in a hierarchy. At the very bottom of the information hierarchy is stuff politicians say. Don't believe a word they say, they all lie. Slightly above stuff politicians say is your opinion. Your opinion, unless you're writing a journal entry, your opinion isn't worth anything to very many people. They want to know facts. Therefore, your opinion hopefully is based in fact. And if you're going to use your opinion, you should support it with facts. So, your opinion alone isn't worth very much. Slightly above your opinion is other people's opinions. You can use other people's opinions to get a starting point from where you want to look for things. You can use other people's opinions to reinforce your opinion. But as far as convincing other people what you are saying is correct, your opinion, other people's opinions, and stuff politicians say doesn't hold very much water, unfortunately. In the scientific and academic communities, we rely on something called peer review. And because we don't have that big book of scientific facts, we use peer review and we publish all of our research so everybody in the academic community can see it, look at it, scrutinize it, and criticize it. Peer review is the best way that we have to verify scientific information without some kind of big book of scientific facts. Slightly above that is websites. Websites I'm putting down there because there are a lot of them. They could be blogs, they could be wiki sites, they could, including Wikipedia, encyclopedias that are online, dictionaries that are online. All forms of websites, whether they're personal websites, government websites, they are all not heavily scrutinized, not heavily edited. They're not fact-checked. So websites need to be heavily scrutinized if you're going to use them to support what you say. But still, they're full of opinions, and nobody is governing the content that goes on them. There's very little regulation on most websites on what can go up there. So it's really difficult to figure out what's fact, what's fiction, what's just opinion. You really need to scrutinize these very heavily, so that's why they're down there. Slightly above would be newspaper articles or popular magazines or popular journals. These are written for a general audience. They're often fact-checked. However, in the age of the 24-hour news cycle and the age of infotainment, newspaper articles have become sensational. They take on opinions very often. They're rooted in opinions and people's feelings about certain things. They also often have quotes from what politicians say. And if you've ever read an actual newspaper, you'll see that retractions and corrections are printed all the time. Newspaper articles are meant as a source of entertainment or infotainment nowadays. In a recent South Park episode, and one of the things I may not have told you about myself is I really enjoy South Park. In a recent South Park episode, one of the characters decided that he was going to be a real journalist from now on and not be swayed by paid advertisements, sponsored content, or articles that were planted there by a public figure or a public organization. And he was heavily criticized for this. because that's just not how news is done nowadays, according to the people at South Park. So you may use news articles to support what you say, but all news articles should be scrutinized very heavily. You shouldn't just believe everything that they say all the time. Popular sources are useful because they give a nice foundation. They're written for a general audience, and you can use popular sources to support what you're writing, but only to a point. They can't be used as the only source of information. We'll talk about the higher sources in a few seconds. But popular sources, since they're written for a general audience, they're not appropriate for an academic audience. For you as a student of this subject, for me as a reviewer of your writing, you need to rely on things that are much more scientific and not as general as popular sources. Above news articles and popular articles are books, textbooks, works of nonfiction. All of these things are decent because they're usually written by academics with a vested interest and education and experience in the subject. Textbooks are rather good. However, the issue with textbooks is because of their very nature as printed materials, or even the e-books, as soon as they're printed, it's possible that they may have errors. The information in them may be already out of date. The information in them may have been wrong. And once it goes to print, it's there forever. And unless you check the list of errata, you never know whether or not there were errors in the textbook. So it's slightly above popular articles and newspapers, but still not the best source of information. And finally, at the top of the information hierarchy is peer-reviewed sources. Journal articles, conference proceedings, and other similar sources. Journal articles and conference proceedings, academic journals and conference proceedings, are subject to what's called peer review. As I said, there is no big book of scientific knowledge. Therefore, there's no single source for information to fact-check things. Peer review relies on the entire academic community to look at information, scrutinize it, criticize it, and decide whether or not they want to accept it into their body of knowledge. What happens in a peer review? Someone who wants to publish something in a journal or conference proceeding, someone sends it to a panel of editorial reviewers. These people will look at it, send it out for comments to people who have volunteered to serve as reviewers for this journal or conference. They'll send back feedback saying, I don't think this was correct here. I didn't like what you wrote here. This doesn't seem right to me. And then the person who receives that feedback, the one who wants to get it published, can either make changes and submit it again, or can say, Roger that, maybe I need to go back and change things. Or the board, the reviewers, might say, I like this. This makes sense to me. Several people on the board may say, I like this, it makes sense to me. And they might accept it for publication. That's the process of peer review. And after it's accepted for publication, it is sent out and published to the entire academic community so that other people can read it, scrutinize it, comment on it, critique it, maybe even try and discredit it. Even something that's published could be eventually discredited by someone new. The process of peer review isn't an exact science, but it's all we have. You should always be striving to use things at the very top of the information hierarchy, peer-reviewed journals and conference proceedings to support what you write. It's difficult to find things there because they're written for a scientific audience, but you, as a student of this subject, are the scientific audience. You need to be patient when reading these articles because the information you need might not jump out at you right away. That's all right. Don't get frustrated. But you need to look at these and pick out information that can help you in your writing. You can think of this class as a process of peer review as well. Think of me as your peer reviewer. Your job, whenever you produce something for me, is to convince me that what you are saying is correct. Therefore, you need evidence from the very top of the information hierarchy, from peer-reviewed sources. If you can't find those, but hopefully you can. If you can't find those, you can go to books, textbooks. They're not as good. Newspapers and popular articles still aren't as good. Don't use websites unless you absolutely have to. You should be able to find stuff at the top, but you can use websites to further support your information. Not only is this stuff available in peer-reviewed sources, but it's also in books, and it's also in websites. And also it happens to agree with my opinion. Use all of these things. Give me as much evidence as you possibly can. Use all of these things to support what you're writing. Don't just rely on your opinion. Don't just rely on one source. Give me as much evidence as possible to convince me that what you're saying is correct. Think of this as a peer review. It's my job to discredit you, and it's your job to convince me that you are right. So give me as much evidence as possible so that if this were a conference and you were standing up in front of me saying that the sky is purple, you better have evidence to support your claim that the sky is purple. Or if you're going to say the sky is blue, and I'm going to stand up and say, no, the sky is definitely purple. If you've got evidence to support your claim that the sky is blue, and I don't, then you win. As much evidence as possible is how you succeed in academic writing and in defending your point of view. You're allowed to have opinions, but your opinions must be substantiated and rooted in scientific fact from things that are higher on the information hierarchy. All right, so to review, in the hierarchy of information quality, at the very bottom is stuff politicians say. Just above that is your opinion. Just above that is other people's opinions. Slightly above that, websites. Just above that, popular sources like magazines, newspapers, and popular journals. Just above that, books, textbooks, works of nonfiction. And at the very top, the one we should always strive to use when supporting anything in academic writing is peer-reviewed sources like journals and conference proceedings. All right, that's all. I want to see you supporting everything that you say to me. Give me as much evidence as possible, and there is absolutely no way that I can say that what you're writing is inadequate. Just give me evidence, and whatever you say works. That's all.